Okay guys, last time I did a slideshow on the best movies I liked growing up watching as a kid, but now this time it's time to do the worst and the guilty pleasure ones, the ones that are either negative or just meh. Well, so I'm going to explain to you all why I don't like them, or they were just plain weird. Let's start off with Spy Kids, the whole trilogy. I don't count the fourth movie because I never watched the fourth movie and I heard the fourth movie was complete garbage. The first one has to be the least worst of the three, mainly because of its heart as well as its goofy charm. And that's not the only Robert Rodriguez movie that I grew up watching. There was also Shark Boy and Lava Girl, a movie that I've already reviewed that was poorly received, but I'll do a short review of it again at some point later in June. Next up is Buddy, a movie that barely anyone remembers, and there's not even a single reviewer besides the Nostalgia team that's done a review it on YouTube. I'll probably check on it soon. And the next one is a sequel to a movie that I've already reviewed, and it's Agent Cody Banks 2, Mission London. It was very, very poor received, and it had nothing to do with the first movie. None of the main characters returned. Next up is the first three Alvin and the Chipmunks movies. That's right, the first three. The fourth movie came out just a couple years ago, so I count the first three as a trilogy. Not completely, but I had a really tough time liking the first movie, but now I don't like it as much. Same goes for the squeakquel. They had to throw in the Chipettes there, right? Yeah. And then at some point during the 8th grade, in 2011, the third movie came out, Chipwrecked, and in my opinion, I feel like Chipwrecked was the worst one. The fourth one was not as bad, but it was still just garbage. Oh, and this movie, I loved it as a kid, but looking back after realizing how this was such a piss on Dr. Seuss, it really made me upset. At least The Grinch tried more than this movie. Poor Mike Myers, I mean, he tried at least. And another Universal movie, Casper, which was not that bad, but it could have done better at least. It was meh in my opinion. And here's a couple of movies which was actually a reboot of a movie that not that many people remember, but it was still okay, Cheaper by the Dozen. This movie was complete garbage as well. It was based on a book that had nothing to do with this. And then there was its sequel, Cheaper by the Dozen 2. What both these movies have in common is it's about a large family of 12 kids basically, and Steve Martin is our main character. And this isn't the only remake of an original movie with a large family. There's Yours, Mine, and Ours, a Nickelodeon, Columbia, MGM, and Paramount movie. God damn, that's a lot of studios, but yeah, this movie was also horrible. I'm glad not many people remember this. Next up is an unforgettable teen flick starring Lindsay Lohan, and that's the movie before she was in Mean Girls, she was in this one, and apparently the only reason why I remember this because my sister briefly owned this movie and I think she forgot about it as well. Yeah, Lindsay Lohan did some good and bad movies after that. And next is Scooby-Doo, the first movie. The only reason why I like the second movie more than the first is because the humor was done better as well as references to the original show more than this movie. And another cartoon turned into movie, Garfield. Bland, generic, poor Bill Murray. I've already mentioned this once on the Dora the Explorer reboot announcement, as well as its sequel, A Tale of Two Kitties. Another movie that I thought it was bland, but shouldn't have been made in the first place in my opinion. Next is Haunted Mansion, a ride from Disney World, starring Eddie Murphy, of course, and that movie was pretty bland and not so scary. Next was The Country Bears, which came around the same time as Haunted Mansion, as well as, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, except this one was, not that good. As for the Ice Age sequels, they were going downhill immediately after the second movie. I thought this movie was okay when I first saw it, but now it's so good. And as for the third movie, that's when it really started going downhill. This was when the movie really got down the toilet, including the fourth and fifth movies. Thank God the fourth and fifth movies were finished after my childhood was complete. And next is Mickey Mouse, starring in The Three Musketeers along with Donald and Goofy. This one was definitely for little kids, but at least it'll introduce some of the classic music. Great, but not so good. And then there's George of the Jungle 2, a sequel to an awesome movie. I've already reviewed this movie of seeing how it is really bad and how there's barely all the actors returned except for the narrator and John Cleese, of course. I'm glad I didn't watch this movie that so soon. And then there's Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas, probably the very first CGI movie starring the mouse, of course. And back then I loved it, now it's just meh. I mean, it's okay for little kids, probably under 4 years old. And the next Christmas movie is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the Island of Christmas Joy. It's another 3D movie starring a classic, Christmas character. The last Christmas movie on this video is The Santa Claus 3, probably the worst of the 3 Christmas movies starring Tim Allen, of course. The first 2 movies were good, but this one was where it's just all just bland and horrible at the same time. I mean, come on, really? And then there was Shark Tale, the worst DreamWorks movie ever made, ripping off Finding Nemo, and surprisingly, it was nominated for Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. And then there's Space Chimps, a movie that came out in 2008. It was not really so well received, and I thought it was funny when I was young, but looking back, it's just really bland. And the final movie, The Wild. Talk about Disney's answer to Madagascar, except this time it wasn't made by Disney themselves. It was made by some kind of random production company, and weirdly, no one remembers it. Well, that's all, you guys. I hope you all comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more new videos. Peace out, rock on,